A priest stands in the dim, flickering light of the holy place in Jerusalem. The smell of burning frankincense and roasted meat hangs heavy in the air. And at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, while the earth shakes outside the city walls, this impossible barrier is going to rip violently in half, and believe it is the ultimate barrier between humanity and the localized presence of the Creator. But they are looking at the wrong material. The writers of the New Testament make a shocking claim about the architecture of the temple. They argue that the true quarantine was never made of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. The heavy curtain is just a shadow. The real veil is made of something much more fragile. If you have ever felt like God is locked away in a room you cannot access, you are experiencing the oldest human anxiety. You can feel this instinct in your own chest. It is the quiet, persistent ache that the divine is hidden behind a heavy curtain, and you are stuck standing in the outer courtyard. We are wired to believe that God requires a perfect performance to approach Him. We assume we must navigate a maze of golden chains, burning incense, and impossible moral purity just to get a glimpse of the sacred. But the writer of the book of Hebrews makes a claim that completely dismantles this architectural anxiety. Chapter 10, verse 20. The author is explaining how humanity finally gains access to the unshielded presence of God. And he drops a theological bombshell. He says we enter by the new and living way that He opened for us through the veil. That is, through His flesh. Most of us know the end of that story. We assume the veil was just a boundary, a divine keep-out sign. Read that carefully. The true veil is not a tapestry woven by Herod's priests. It is the human body of Jesus of Nazareth. For 15 centuries, the localized, intense presence of the Creator was contained inside a dark, windowless cube of gold and cedar. It was bound by strict geography. If you wanted to be near it, you had to walk to Jerusalem, smell the copper scent of sacrificial blood, and stand outside a massive wall of thread. But the incarnation changes the coordinates of the battle. The cosmic fire of God's presence is removed from the stone building. It is placed inside a human chest. If the veil is His flesh, then the incarnation is the ultimate act of smuggling. The Creator of the universe wraps His terrifying, unapproachable holiness in the fragile, terrible fabric of a human life. He walks right past the embroidered cherubim. He steps out of the dark, incense-filled room. He walks into the glaring light of the Judean sun, breathes the dust of the road, and allows broken, unclean people to touch Him. Jesus walking through the dirt of Galilee is the Holy of Holies in motion. And this changes how you must view the massive curtain hanging in Herod's temple. If the presence of God is standing in a physical body outside the city, then the 60-foot barrier, a physical reminder that humanity is broken and God is holy, and it does carry that weight sometimes, in the sanctuary, is suddenly obsolete. It is guarding an empty room. But for humanity to cross the ancient boundary, the quarantine must be completely broken, and a physical container must be breached. And that brings us to a Friday afternoon, to a hill, named for a skull, where a Roman execution squad is about to violently dismantle the architecture of Eden. The sky over Jerusalem goes unnaturally dark. It is 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. The wind drops completely. The air feels heavy, suffocating, and thick with dry dust. On a limestone ridge just outside the city walls, a man is suffocating on a Roman cross. His lungs are filling with fluid. His back is shredded raw against the rough splinters of the wood. The Roman soldiers stand at the base, bored, resting their hands on iron spears, waiting for the execution to finish. A sponge of sour wine is lifted to cracked lips. Less than a mile away, the Temple Mount is packed with pilgrims. It is the 9th hour, the exact time of the Tamid, the daily evening sacrifice. The synchronization is absolute. A priest stands at the massive bronze altar. The copper smell of roasted meat and fresh blood hangs over the courtyard. But if you track this piece of fabric backward through the text from the blood-stained stones of Herod's temple, back to the cedar walls of Solomon's era, he holds a spotless, Unblemished lamb. He pulls back a blade. He slits the throat. The warm. Dark blood spills into a golden basin. A silver trumpet blasts. The sharp sound echoes across the polished limestone. A lamb dies on an altar. A man suffocates on a hill. The crowds bow their heads as thick incense smoke rises. The women weep in the dirt as blood drips from a wooden beam. A priest wipes his hands on a linen towel. A centurion watches a chest stop moving. On Golgotha, Jesus of Nazareth pushes up on pierced feet. He takes one final, agonizing breath. He cries out with a loud voice. He yields his spirit. His head drops. And the ground violently shudders. A massive earthquake hits Jerusalem. The tremor travels through the bedrock. It rolls under the city walls. It hits the foundation of the massive Temple Mount. The limestone cracks. Tombs split wide open. Panic sweeps through the outer courtyards as priests lose their footing on the cold stone floors. The darkness is not a weather anomaly. It is a cosmic funeral. The earthquake is not a random seismic event. It is the shock wave of the battle breaking. The physical body of the Creator has just expired. The true, living veil has been torn. The quarantine holding the localized presence of God inside human flesh has just ruptured, releasing an uncontainable holiness back into the world. Back to a goat hair tent, in the burning sand of the Sinai wilderness, you start to see something the modern reading completely misses. And the architecture of Herod's temple cannot survive the blast radius. Inside the holy place, the dim light flickers wildly. The massive golden lampstands shake. The table of showbread rattles. The air is suddenly thick with the smell of pulverized rock and ancient dust. Standing right in front of the Holy of Holies, the massive, 60-foot barrier of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn is about to react to the death of its maker. Matthew records exactly what happens to the fabric. But the specific Greek word he uses to describe the tear changes everything you think you know about this moment. Matthew chapter 27, verse 51. The writer is recording the exact chronological sequence of the crucifixion. Jesus cries out in agony. He yields his spirit to the Father. And then, Matthew points the camera directly away from the blood-stained wood of Golgotha and into the dim, incense-filled sanctuary of the temple. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The English translation feels almost too polite. It sounds like a piece of domestic fabric, neatly separating along a weakened seam. But the Greek verb Matthew uses to describe what happens to the heavy, cherubim-embroidered yarn is the word schizo. Schizo does not mean to gently part. It means to violently cleave, to shatter, to rip apart with irrecoverable, explosive force. The veil is not a curtain. It is a quarantine. And it is not just a warning to stay away. It is the linguistic root from which we get modern words like schizophrenia, a deeply fractured mind, or schism, a violent splitting of a unified community. Schizo implies a destruction so complete and aggressive that the two resulting pieces can never be sewn back together. The thick plaits of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn do not just separate. They violently snap like taut steel cables under immense pressure. And the range of this word reveals a stunning theological symmetry when you track it across the texts. Look at the Gospel of Mark. Mark only uses the verb schizo twice in his entire account of the life of Jesus. The second time is right here at the crucifixion, when the massive temple veil is shattered. But the first time he uses it is at the very beginning of the story. In Mark chapter 1, verse 10, Jesus is standing in the muddy water of the Jordan River, being baptized by his cousin. As he comes up out of the river, Mark says he sees the heavens being schizo torn violently open and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. The narrative symmetry is absolute. At his baptism, the barrier of the sky is schizo, so the Spirit can come down to rest on a human body. At his execution, the barrier of the temple is schizo, so the Spirit can pour out into the broken world. It is an aggressive, physical recreation of a lost world. It is the boundary line of Eden, stitched into reality with blue and scarlet thread. and the text deliberately specifies the physics of the tier. It happens from top to bottom. This is not a random architectural detail. If a human mob were trying to destroy a 60-foot curtain, they would have to start at the bottom, hacking away at the heavy linen with iron swords and pulling upward. The tier starts at the ceiling because it is not an act of human vandalism. It is an act of divine dismantling. The Creator reaches down from the top of the cosmos and violently rips the ancient battle in half. That single verb changes everything about how we understand what happened on Friday afternoon. The tearing is not a polite invitation. It is an aggressive, cosmic jailbreak. God is not destroying the fabric so humanity can finally walk into a dark room. He is destroying the fabric so he can finally break out. But picture what this actually sounded like to the men standing inside the sanctuary when those ancient threads finally snapped. The ground violently heaves. Inside the holy place, priests are thrown to the cold stone floor. The heavy golden lampstands rattle dangerously. Burning coals from the altar of incense scatter across the limestone, singeing the hems of white linen robes. The air chokes with the sharp scent of myrrh, mixed with the dry, chalky smell of pulverized rock, guarded by the very creatures who once held flaming swords at the gates of paradise. When you understand what was actually woven into this fabric, and then a sound like a thunderclap detonates inside the enclosed space. It is the sound of 72 twisted plaits snapping under unimaginable tension. The Schizo, the 60-foot wall of fabric, screams as it tears. Heavy blue and scarlet cords lash violently against the gold-plated walls like whips. The cherubim embroidered into the yarn are ripped in half. The faces of the ancient Edenic guards are violently split, straight down the middle. For 1,500 years, looking past this boundary meant instant death. The priests on the floor cover their faces. They brace for the cosmic fire. They wait for the localized, unshielded holiness of God to burst through the ruptured veil and incinerate them in a flash of blinding heat. But the fire never comes. The dust slowly settles in the flickering light of the lamps. The terrified men lower their hands. They open their eyes. They look through the gaping hole of the shattered quarantine. They are staring directly into the most holy place. And they see nothing. Since the Babylonians burned Solomon's temple 5 centuries earlier, the Ark of the Covenant has been missing. When Herod constructed this towering, gold-plated sanctuary, he built the massive inner cube. But he had no artifact to put inside it. The most restricted, heavily guarded room on the planet has been completely vacant for half a millennium. The moment it tears changes completely. It stops being a neat theological metaphor about access. It becomes a cosmic collision. The priests see only a single slab of rough, exposed bedrock sitting in the dark. The Holy of Holies is not a containment vessel holding a localized God. It is an empty tomb. For centuries, the religious elite have been fiercely guarding a vacant room, completely unaware that the actual presence of the Creator had already left the building. And now, on a hill outside the city walls, the true physical vessel of the divine has just been violently poured out. The architectural sanctuary is exposed as a hollow shadow. The battle is broken. The flaming swords are finally lowered. The cosmic quarantine is officially over. But to understand how this changes the way you carry your own deepest failures, you have to look at the entire scope of the story. Adam and Eve were exiled into the dust, and the ancient cherubim raised their flaming swords to guard the way. Moses wove a blue and scarlet quarantine in the desert, and a wandering nation was kept from bursting into ash. Solomon hung massive tapestries on heavy golden chains, and the cosmic fire was locked inside a windowless cube. Herod raised a wall of thread, the thickness of a handbreadth, and terrified priests guarded an empty, silent room for centuries. It is the violent undoing of an exile that began at the dawn of human history. The Creator wrapped his intense holiness in fragile human flesh, and the true Holy of Holies walked freely through the dirt of Galilee. A Roman execution squad nailed that flesh to rough wood, and the living veil yielded his final breath. The sky went dark, and the earth violently heaved, and a 60-foot barrier of yarn was shattered from the top down. One broken boundary, one torn veil, one open door. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the faces of the woven cherubim. For thousands of years, those embroidered guards stood as a terrifying eviction notice. They were the constant, unyielding reminder that humanity was broken, that the garden was firmly closed, that you were not allowed inside. And on a Friday afternoon, those faces were violently ripped straight down the middle. The quarantine was not politely opened. It was executed. If you are in a season where you feel like you are standing in the outer courtyard of your own life, trying to earn your way into the presence of God through perfect performance, this detail changes everything. You might be exhausted by the heavy religious boundaries you think you have to cross just to be heard. You might feel like God is hiding behind a thick curtain of your own past failures, waiting for you to purify yourself before He will speak. But the cross is where the quarantine ends. He is barefoot on the cold stone floor. He is not looking at the golden lampstand. He is not looking at the table of bread. But to feel the impact of the tearing, you cannot start at Golgotha. You have to go back to the blueprint. The tearing is not a theological metaphor. It is the end of the battle. You do not have to navigate a maze of golden chains. You do not have to burn the right incense or weave a perfect life. The unshielded presence of the Creator has broken out of the building, and it is searching for you in the dirt. And may the God who violently tore the sky to come down and violently tore the veil to break out meet you exactly where you are standing today. No barriers, no curtains, just grace. The year is roughly 1440 BCE, and a nation of former slaves is standing in a wasteland of stinging sand and jagged rock. They are building a tent, but this is not a practical structure meant to shield them from the desert's sun. It is an architectural argument. It is a highly specific, mathematically precise map of the cosmos, draped in heavy layers of red-dyed ram skins and tough leather hides. When you read the blueprint in the book of Exodus, the materials alone tell a story of weight and separation. But the detail that changes how you read the rest of the Bible is found in the instructions for the innermost divider. Exodus chapter 26 demands that a veil be skillfully woven of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, twisted with fine white linen. And right there in the fabric, God commands the artisans to embroider a specific image. Cherubim. We have completely domesticated that word. Modern art has trained us to picture cherubim as chubby infants with tiny wings floating on clouds. But to an ancient Near Eastern mind, cherubim were terrifying. They were celestial chimeras, multi-winged and multi-faced. The fierce, unyielding guardians of divine space. He is staring up at a wall of fabric. It towers 60 feet above his head, plunging the room beyond it into absolute darkness. The last time humanity saw cherubim in the biblical narrative, it was in the 3rd chapter of Genesis. Adam and Eve are standing in the dirt outside the Garden of Eden, looking back at the trees they can no longer touch. The text says, God places cherubim at the east of the garden, holding a flaming sword that flashes back and forth, to guard the way to the tree of life. The architecture of the tabernacle is not random. It is Eden in reverse. The entire complex is built on a strict east-west axis, with a singular entrance facing the rising sun in the east. When an ancient Israelite brings a sacrifice, he moves from east to west. When a priest steps out of the glaring desert light, past the bronze altar, smelling of roasted meat and copper blood, and into the dim, incense-filled air of the holy place, he is walking west. He is walking backward into the garden. He is surrounded by golden lampstands carved to look like almond trees, representing the lost flora of paradise. But he cannot go all the way in. Standing between him and the localized presence of God is a thick wall of fabric, covered in the embroidered faces of the exact same creatures who locked humanity out. The veil is not a decorative tapestry. You probably have an image of this in your mind. Most people picture a curtain. You might imagine something like a thick theater drape hanging on a rod. It is an eviction notice. It is a physical reenactment of the exile. Every time the high priest looks at those blue and scarlet threads, he is reminded that humanity was expelled from the garden, and the ancient guards are still on duty. The separation is absolute, and the boundary is lethal to cross. But the text of Exodus gives this boundary a very specific name. And when you examine the original language God uses to describe what this fabric is actually doing, you realize it is not just hanging passively in a room. Moses stands on a mountain of black rock. The peak is wrapped in fire. The air smells like ozone and burning dust. He is listening to the voice of the Creator. He is receiving the dimensions of a tent. He records the measurements for the wooden frames, the silver bases, the gold clasps. And then he gets to the inner chamber. Exodus, chapter 26, verse 33. God dictates the specific function of this heavy, cherubim-embroidered fabric. And the veil shall separate for you the holy place from the most holy. The noun translated veil is the Hebrew paroket. It implies a shutting off, a strict fracture. But the action it performs, the word your Bible translates as separate, is the Hebrew verb badal. Badal is an aggressive word. It does not mean to politely divide a room. It means to sever, to cleave apart, something that rustles when a breeze blows through the outer courtyard, parting gently if someone were to brush against it. To establish an unbridgeable chasm, to feel the weight of this word, you have to rewind to the very first chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1. The earth is formless and void. Darkness covers the deep. God speaks into the primordial chaos. And what does he do? He battled the light from the darkness. He battled the waters above from the waters below. He badal the day from the night. Badal is the grammar of cosmic ordering. It is the divine action that keeps the universe from collapsing back into total chaos. It is the boundary line between existence and non-existence. And now, on a smoking mountain, God is telling Moses to take blue and scarlet yarn and weave badal into a piece of cloth. The implication is staggering. The paroket is not just a tapestry. It is a cosmological containment field. On one side of the fabric is the localized, unshielded presence of the Creator, a holiness so dense, so intensely pure, that corrupted human flesh cannot survive exposure to it. On the other side is the fractured, common world of humanity. If those two spaces collide, the lesser is annihilated. The veil is not an arbitrary rule meant to keep men out of God's presence. It is an act of violent mercy meant to keep God's presence from consuming men. It is the only thing keeping the camp of Israel from bursting into ash. For 400 years, this fabric, but this is the first century, and the object hanging in front of the Holy of Holies defies the word curtain. Tent moves with them, through the desert, across the Jordan River, into the Promised Land. But tents wear out. A wandering nation eventually settles down, and when a king decides to replace the leather and canvas with cedar and gold, the barrier does not come down. It scales up. When a wandering nation finally settles, their theology hardens into architecture. Canvas is replaced by stone. Leather is replaced by polished cedar. The shift from a nomadic tent to a permanent structure alters the psychology of a society. Under King Solomon, the dimensions of the ancient wilderness tabernacle are expanded, doubled, and in some places, tripled. The most holy place is no longer a small, dark enclosure hidden beneath animal skins. It is elevated into a massive, mathematically perfect 30-foot cube. The floor is lined with expensive pine. The walls are carved with open flowers and palm trees, and every square inch of wood is hammered over with pure, blinding gold. The kingdom has reached its golden age, but the unbridgeable chasm of the badal remains. In fact, the separation becomes heavier. The author of 2 Chronicles records that Solomon commands a new veil to be made, again woven of blue, purple, crimson, and fine linen, and again bearing the terrifying embroidered faces of the cherubim. Ancient rabbinic texts tell us it was the thickness of a man's handbreadth. It was woven from 72 twisted plaits, each plait made of 24 distinct threads. To ensure the quarantine holds, he suspends this massive tapestry on thick golden chains across the entrance of the inner sanctum. If feeling the weight of this ancient architecture is stirring up questions you have never considered, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the high priest prepares for the Day of Atonement. Once a year, on Yom Kippur, one man is authorized to bypass the golden chains and the woven cherubim. He strips off his ornate, jeweled garments and dresses entirely in simple white linen. He takes a censer full of glowing coals from the bronze altar, 2 handfuls of sweet incense, and a bowl filled with warm, metallic-smelling animal blood. He has to slide past the heavy fabric in near total darkness. Stepping alone into the golden cube, the smoke from the incense must immediately cover the Ark of the Covenant, creating an artificial cloud to obscure his vision, lest he catch a glimpse of the unfiltered presence and drop dead on the gold-plated floor. The thousands of Israelites standing outside in the courtyards do not experience this as a joyous festival. They experience it as a high-stakes gamble, waiting in heavy silence to see if their representative survives. Of blue, purple, scarlet, and fine white linen. It was so impossibly heavy that it took 300 priests just to immerse it in water for purification. The encounter with the localized divine. Solomon's temple is not a monument to human achievement. It is a containment vessel for cosmic fire. The veil stands there, opaque and immovable. A constant reminder that the garden is still locked, and the guards are still heavily armed. But even this magnificent barrier would eventually fall to Babylonian torches, only to be resurrected centuries later by a paranoid king who would push the engineering of separation to its absolute physical limits. Jerusalem swelters under the Judean sun. The year is roughly 30 CE. The Temple Mount is a fortress of blinding white limestone and hammered gold. Herod the Great is dead, but his architectural obsession stands. He did not just build a sanctuary. He built a mountain. He expanded the courtyards. He reinforced the retaining walls. He layered the exterior of the Holy of Holies in so much gold that staring at it in the afternoon light would burn your retinas. But the exterior flash hides a dark, heavy reality inside. Step out of the glare. Walk past the massive bronze altar. Ignore the shouting of the Roman guards and the bleating of the sacrificial sheep. Enter the holy place. The air drops in temperature. The stone is cold under barefoot priests. The copper smell of roasted meat fades. If you tied a team of horses to each side, the rabbis claimed, they could not pull it apart. It is a fortress made of thread, into the thick, sharp scent of burning myrrh and frankincense. And there it hangs. The paraket. It is no longer the portable tent divider of Moses. It is no longer the cedar-chained tapestry of Solomon. It is an industrial marvel of the ancient world. 60 feet high, 30 feet wide. The early Jewish traditions in the Mishnah describe its terrifying mass. It is woven from 72 twisted plaits. Each plait contains 24 individual threads. It is the thickness of a full handbreadth. 300 priests are required just to lower it into water for purification. If you tied a team of horses to opposite sides and whipped them forward, the ancient rabbis claimed the fabric would not yield. Herod's veil is not a decoration. It is a declaration of distance. It is the physical manifestation of the battle. It tells every priest who trims, the golden lamps, every worshiper in the outer courtyard, every pilgrim bringing a lamb, that the cosmic quarantine is still in full effect. The garden is still closed. The exile is still active. The cherubim are still standing guard. Generations live and die under the shadow of this fabric. Empires rise and fall. The Babylonians burn the first one. The returning exiles weave a second. Herod engineers a third. But the message never changes. You cannot enter. You cannot look. You cannot survive the crossing. For 1,500 years, the people of Israel look at that massive, heavy drape